Namaskar दोस्तों, welcome to channel Toxicology on board. In this video, we will be discussing about DABT topic Cohort Epidemiological Study. Let's directly go into the question. So the question is, what would be considered an advantage of the Cohort Epidemiological Study design? So this question is related to epidemiological study design, that to cohort type of study. Option A is requires a small number of subjects. Option B is suitable for rare diseases. Option C is yields in incidence and risk rates. Option D is short follow-up periods with subjects. Let's see what is the right answer. As you can see, the right answer is in green text. Option C, yields, incidence and risk rates. It means cohort epidemic study designs, yields, incidence and risk rates. Let us understand what is the explanation and reference which is given uh, by American Board of Toxicology. So cohort studies evaluate multiple effects following exposure. So you can study about multiple effects by using this cohort study design. Cohort study are prospective study. They are not retrospective study. Yielding incidence and risk rates. So this is our option that we have come across. The follow-up can last years. In case of cohort studies, the follow-up will be lasting for years. So the cohort studies are done up to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years like that. In contrast to cross-sectional study, if you look at cross-sectional study, these cross-sectional studies are for short duration. They are for, in order to get the results in a short interval of time. You will get quick results. Coming to case control studies are best for rare diseases. There are certain diseases which are very rare to only specific population. So for in order to study those study rare diseases, you have to always go for case control studies and use small number of subjects because the disease itself is in very small population localized to one particular geographical region, because of which you have to go for case control studies. Okay, so if you want to learn more in detail, go to Casred chapter 8th edition, page number 131, table 4 and 5. You can go back and read. So let's see very quickly this the picture which is on the extreme right, where you can see the type of study designs are there. We have observational study designs, we have interventional study designs. If you look at observational study design, we have descriptive and we have analytical. In case of descriptive, we have case reports, case series, cross-sectional studies. Okay, just now we came across now cross-sectional studies are good for yielding quick results, right? Then next we have analytical, we have cross-sectional, case control, cohort and ecological. Coming to cohort studies yields incidence and risk rates. Cohort studies used for multiple effects. They are prospective studies, right? These are all belong to cohort studies. Case control के लिए studying rare diseases use very small number of subjects. This is how you have to remember in your exam. Coming to interventional studies, we have non-randomized trials, we have randomized controlled trials, we have cluster randomized trials. So interventional studies are something which are related to clinical trials, right? And above and observational studies, they were for epidemiological studies. So let's through this question, let's see what else we can learn from this topic. So we have a cohort study is a type of observational epidemiological study, right? You have seen in the previous picture, observational study, where a group of people, a cohort. So always cohort studies are done for a particular geographical region. Okay, for example, in New York or Delhi, or you have to select a particular locality. There you are studying that particular effects of the disease or incidents on that particular group of people. Okay, is followed over a time to see how many develop a specific outcome like a disease. There are certain diseases like typhoid, smallpox, which are restricted to certain geographical area. For that reason, to study such disease, we need to go for cohort study design. These studies are longitudinal, as I said, they go for long period of time, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, meaning they track participants over an extended period of time. and are useful for identifying the risk factors and natural history of the disease. Since we are studying the disease in that particular geographical area over a generations, so we will be studying the effect of that particular chemical or impact of that incident on that multi-generationally we will be studying. So for that reason, we will be able to know about the history of the disease. Unlike clinical trials, cohort studies do not involve intervention or treatments. If you see in the case of cohort studies, you are just observing the impact of a disease or a chemical on that specific population. Where in the case of clinical trials, you are intentionally selecting 100 or 200 subjects, human volunteers or patient subjects. There you are administering the drug or that chemical to that specific population, and there will be particular specific defined treatment schedule will be there, how much dose need to be administered to that subjects at what intervals. All these things will be already well defined in the study protocol by the principal investigator. Researchers simply observe the participant exposures and outcomes. So in the case of cohort studies, the researcher, the scientific person, just observes that group of population and he will start collecting the data. Okay, then he will analyze that data that we will see in next upcoming. So what are the key characteristics? It is a longitudinal, it is observational, it is exposure based, it is uh, prospective or retrospective, and focus is on that particular incident. If there is some chemical accident or factory spill in that particular area, then it is focused on that particular incidents, then effect. Like that, causation and effect will be you will be studying in cohort study. What are the steps one has to follow? Identify the cohort, the group of population, identify the exposure status, because incidents के बाद how much, after how much the exposure has happened, and from that incidence geographically that group of population how much far it is there, that is also important, and what type of exposure, that is also important. To determining exposure status, follow participant over a time. As I said, no, you have to, after that incidents also you have to follow every 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, after 10 year, like that. Analysis of the data. Once you start collecting the data, then you will decide what are your objective, what are you want to study. Based on that, you will apply different types of statistical tests, t-test, ANOVA test, regressional, cross-sectional review, whatever the statistic tests are there. You will decide what is the p level of significance, there is 0.05 or 0.001 or like that. You will decide, then you will do. See, analysis of data, what I'm trying to say, that multiple things you can study from that once you get the data. You can study effect of the incident on the male and female population. You can study the effect on the that particular incident or chemical in the particular cohort at a young stage, uh, at the middle age, at the later stages of the human life, the old age, like that. You can study multiple effects. But whereas in the case of clinical trials, already 2 to 4 5 objectives already fixed, but here you can, based on the data, you can play with the data. That is what I'm trying to say. The next is, see what we have, strength of the cohort studies can establish temporality. Very very important, go back and read what is temporality. Cohort studies are used to develop establish temporality. Next one is examine multiple outcomes, as I discussed earlier. No, then coming to limitations, we have time consuming. These cohort studies are time consuming and expensive, because since in the case of clinical trial it is already fixed, it is either 1 year study, 2 year study, 3 year study. There is a fixed interval will be defined in the study protocol by the investigator. But here in the case of epidemiological cohort studies, there is no fixed time, and that is the reason it might be, while collecting the data you might be using lot of software or resources, human resources also, because of which it can increase the cost of that particular study. Then coming to prone to bias, since the persons who are working on that particular geographical area, they might be little sensitive to that population or might be little biased to that population. There is a reason, for that reason it might be, they might be subjected to bias when they are recording the results. But in case of, what happens in the case of clinical trial, already you are following a GCP, so there will be already, you cannot violate the regulate which are already defined in the GCP. So there will be bias thing would not be much more in the case of clinical trials, unlike in the case of epidemiological studies. Then coming to cannot establish causation. As I said now, since the population is not well defined, that population will be subjected to other chemicals also, other incidents also. So final causation, final effect, is it because of the treatment, because of that our chemical which we are studying, or which the incident which we are studying, or is that person at the same time exposed to certain other chemical or certain other causation, that cannot be established. But in the case of clinical trials, what happens? There will be a group of subjects will be there, treatment will be there. So whatever the effect is there, any adverse effects or serious or non-serious adverse effects, we can directly relate it to treatment. Whether our chemical is causing, whether the treatment is causing that adverse effect, that can be studied. But in this case, it becomes established causation and effect. To establish that relationship, it becomes little bit of difficult. Okay. Then next what we have, then we have a very beautiful chart is there. Now to understand type of epidemiological studies, we have non-experimental studies and experimental studies. We have non-experimental or observational studies, as well as experimental studies or interventional studies. We have population based, we have individual based. In the case of population based, we have descriptive or health survey. As I said, no, if there is a certain disease, epidemiological disease, epidemic is broke out in a particular geographical area. For example, in Africa, there are certain diseases, malaria outbreak. Something has happened only in the case of particular geographical area. Then you will do some health survey. You will do, how you will do, by posing certain questionnaires. Questionnaires will be there. 15 to 20 questionnaires will be there, which related to that particular study which you are doing. Then will keep collecting the data periodically. So health survey will be the one which is responsible for population based, whereas analytical ecological study, wherein what you will do, you will collect the soil sample or water sample or air sampling will be there. The impact of that particular chemical or spill something in that particular geographical area you will do. That is comes under ecological study. Coming to descriptive studies, we have case report and case series and individual based. And so what happens in the case, there are some certain scientist is there who is working in a certain area, and the chemical spill or some kind of accident has happened. So you'll be studying the same individual over a period of time. Okay. Immediately what was the effect after 1 month, after 3 months. So individual based studies will be taking place. Case report that you will call it. Okay. Certain chemicals are there which show their adverse effects or toxic effects over a period of time, not immediate. Acute effect will be there, chronic effect will be there. So those can be done in individual based case reports. Then coming to analytical, we have cross-sectional study or prevalence study, we have case control study or case reference study, and we have cohort study or follow-up study, right? Coming to experimental intervention studies, we have randomized controlled trial or clinical trial, experimental intervention study, non-randomized quasi-experimental field trial or community trial. See, what I am trying to say is, do not get a panic, do not get confused, because you might be thinking there are certain individuals who are appearing for this exam who might have not at all come across these kind of terminology, right? But based on my collection of the questions and what kind of I have seen is that 1 or 2 questions will be there on the topic case control or retrospective analysis or cross-sectional. So these terminologies I have come across either in the options or in the questions. So just at least no need of going in deep about these subjects. At least try to know the terminology. What type of study is done for what kind of population, and what type of regression analysis, correlation, case control, cohort. These terminologies try to understand. Not from my video. At least it is there in the syllabus. Go back and check in the DABT syllabus. Keywords will be there. That you type it. For nowadays it is much more easier. You can directly read it from with the help of AI, you can read it. When you type it in the Google, it directly gives you notes. Or else in the first slide itself, I have given the page number and table. I myself also not referred. You people can also go back and check. At least, as I said, no tables you read. From tables, you will get lot of information. The questionnaire who was setting up these questions, no, I have observed that for my learning is that they ask from the tables. These tables contain concise so much of information in a single tables, so that is very very useful. Then coming to prospective cohort study, this is an example for non-smokers as well as smokers. You people can pause the video and read it yourselves, how the smoking is affecting the causation of cancer. So that type of studies can be done in prospective cohort studies. Okay, thank you so much. Be curious. For any questions, please comment, like, subscribe, and follow the YouTube channel Toxicology on Board. Thank you.